Shout out, folks. It's Bob the Old Rucker coming at you raw and uncensored. And as always, only God knows what's going to happen on this show. Welcome to Shout Out from the Pit, where we bring stories and topics designed to add to your toolbox as you trudge the road to happy destiny. And a shout out to my friend, partner, producer, and brains behind the scenes, Redbeard. Today's topic is staying in your lane. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Well, today it's just me, and for the topic I've chosen, stay in your lane. It's something that's been bouncing around in my brain lately. I was an armor crewman when I first heard something like staying in my lane. I understood it to mean I was to maintain a line of sight for targets between left and right boundaries set for me, and not be concerned with the targets in lanes other tanks in my platoon were tracking. I also learned it was used in certain sporting events and even driving, which makes sense for obvious reasons. I don't know when I learned it was a saying for folks to mind their own business, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the word stay in your lane. I've gotten better at staying in my lane over the years, and I freely admit it isn't always easy. Bill Wilson felt the same way. In a letter he wrote in 1945, he said, "I went through several fruitless years in a state called viewing with alarm for the good of the movement. I thought it was up to me to be always correcting conditions. Seldom has anybody been able to tell me what I ought to do, and nobody had ever succeeded in effectively telling me what I must do. I had to learn the hard way out of my own experience. When setting out to check others, I found myself often motivated by fear of what they were doing, self-righteousness, and even downright intolerance. Consequently, I seldom succeeded in correcting anything. I just raised barriers of resentment that cut off any suggestion, example, understanding, or love." Good words, Bill. Thanks. I can identify completely, especially since I'm the guy who pulls the pin on the hand grenade and then throws my body on it. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11, folks are encouraged to make it their ambition to lead a quiet life, minding their own business and working with their hands. Gossiping, being a busybody, meddling, these things are annoying to everyone. If someone gossips to me, I just ask, who's going to tell him, me or you? We got to stop the flow of divisiveness that tears us apart. And yes, I'm guilty. And when I catch myself, I stop, and when necessary, ask for forgiveness. Here's a quick story. A fellow asked to see me long ago. When we met, he asked for forgiveness because he'd listened and even believed what a third party told him about me. He said he began watching me, looking for me to do the very things he was warned about. He observed just the opposite. He not only apologized, but said I was an example to him and thanked me, gave me a bit of a swollen head and boosted my ego. On the flip side, I'd heard a rumor about a fella and allowed myself to listen to the rumor and form an opinion. I later discovered I was wrong and decided to move along. However, it rented space in my head. I'd passed judgment on an unsuspecting victim and had even treated the person differently. Then I remembered the young man who asked me for forgiveness. That fellow was a bigger man than me. So now I had a choice. Be the man or be the coward. Remember Marty McFly from the movie Back to the Future? No one calls me a chicken. Yeah, I had to make the situation right. But why? Why not just move on and let it go? Why subject myself to such humility? Well, for me, humility is not one of my virtues. If I could demonstrate this virtue, even at the cost of the pain, it would make me a better person and, thus I guarantee you, make me think twice before I engaged in such gossip in the future. How about a meddler, a busybody? Certainly you can identify with a person that's got to insert unsolicited advice. Yeah, sometimes it's warranted and perhaps needed, but there's a difference between someone saying, hey, bad idea, you're about to do something that isn't going to end well. You inherently hear good advice and hopefully you heed the warning. But then there's that person that wants to hear his own profound and insightful words. That guy is the reason for emergency rooms. Okay, that's a bit extreme. But still, don't you just want to tell the busybody that if you wanted his advice, you'd scrape it out of a diaper? Okay, yeah, it's a little much too, I get it, but you know what I mean. It's aggravating. And how about that guy? This one makes me crazy. That says, Jesus told me to tell you, ... Listen, I've got some words for that person, and it ain't good morning. But that's what I want to say. But I also want to rise above my own impertinence. So learning to handle meddlers gently is an art, a practiced art. How about this? Look, I appreciate your concern, your insight, and incredible logic. All right, I'm getting snarky, so let me start this over. Thank you. It's that simple. Saying thank you and moving on stops a lot of stuff, if you know what I mean. And if you say it enough times to the same person, maybe, just maybe, they'll get the point. Or not. But you can't get rid of a bad temper by losing it. Just practice saying thank you until God gives you the wisdom to handle it in a way that works for you. And the flip side, after listening to me talk about how annoying unsolicited advice is to us, think twice before offering unsolicited advice and being a meddling busybody. You don't want to be that guy. Speaking of staying in your lane when driving, literally just today, a person going in my direction pulled right into my lane, and it's a miracle we didn't collide. The real miracle was that I was able to let it go. This is something we simply have to do when people drive dangerously or meddle in our business. Attitudes are contagious, and I don't want to spread a bad attitude. Simple techniques include just saying it to myself or even out loud, let it go. Road rage takes us down a path that sometimes there is no coming back from. We can get just as wrapped up with busybodies as we can with bad drivers. Let it go. The saying, stay in your lane, isn't a bad thing, and don't let it get to you if someone says it to you. Whether you think your involvement was necessary or not, respect goes a long way. Stop it. If somebody says, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. No one wants us to get into their business, especially uninvited, nor do we want others crossing the line into our business. As bad as we think we can help, thinking it through and deciding to keep our mouths shut may be the best solution. I think me wanting to save the world by injecting my incredible wisdom is just another form of my gigantic ego. And honestly, there are times when I just want to tell an egotistical do-gooder that if I wanted their advice, I'd scrape it off my boots after walking through a cow pasture. So let's learn to pray for wisdom like the Serenity Prayer and not lose any friends, or worse, have our backsides handed to us. In another letter Bill wrote in 1966, he said, AAs often say our leaders do not drive by mandate. They lead by example. If we would favorably affect others, we ourselves need to practice what we preach and forget the preaching too. The quiet, good example speaks for itself. And remember the last part of the verse I mentioned from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11. That part about working with our hands, maybe if we practice doing more and talking less, folks would appreciate us rather than cross the street and go the opposite direction when they see us coming. So instead of getting out of our lane with words, we get into service work with our hands, doing rather than talking. Something to think about. As Sean Connery's character said in The Untouchables, here endeth the lesson for today. And what say you on today's topic? Leave your thoughts and comments on shoutoutfromthepit.com. Redbeard and I want to give you an opportunity to be on the show. If you have a word of encouragement or want to share your experience, strength, and hope, let us know. Everyone has a story, and we have a platform to share your story. This is, after all, your show. So share your story with us on shoutoutfromthepit.com. And check out Diane's missives, her words of encouragement and tools for your toolbox. And listen to personal stories from folks who beat the odds and are now living awesome lives. Our phone, email, and message board information are all on the site. Be sure to share the show with folks and subscribe for future episodes. It's for fun and for free. And remember, if you want to feel good about yourself, go out and do something for someone else. Finally, as always, you're not alone. If no one's told you that they love you today, we love you. God bless you and have an outstanding American day. This is Bob the Old Rucker. Peace out.